Title: The Whispering Woods. In the heart of a dense forest stood an old, abandoned mansion shrouded in mystery. Its decaying walls seemed to whisper secrets of the past to anyone who dared to venture close. Emily, a young journalist, had heard tales of the mansion's dark history and decided to investigate. Chapter 1: Into the Woods. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees as Emily made her way deeper into the forest. The dense canopy blocked out most of the daylight, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. Emily clutched her notebook tightly to her chest, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. She had been searching for the mansion for hours, following the faint trail of rumors and half-truths that had led her here. As she trudged through the underbrush, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through her veins. But she pressed on, driven by the promise of uncovering the truth behind the mansion's dark past. She had always been drawn to stories of the supernatural, and this was her chance to prove to the world that there was more to the world than met the eye. Chapter 2: The Gateway. After what felt like hours of walking, Emily finally stumbled upon the overgrown path that led to the mansion. The gate loomed before her, its iron bars twisted and rusted with age. With trembling hands, Emily pushed open the gate and stepped onto the path, her footsteps muffled by the thick blanket of leaves. The mansion stood before her, a hulking mass of crumbling stone and twisted ivy. As she approached, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The mansion seemed to loom over her like a living thing, its windows dark and foreboding. But she pushed aside her fear and continued forward, her curiosity driving her ever onward. Chapter 3: The Mansion's Secrets. Inside the mansion, the air was heavy with the scent of decay. The floorboards groaned beneath Emily's weight as she explored the dimly lit corridors, her flashlight casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, and every creak echoed like a warning. But Emily pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As she moved deeper into the mansion, the suspense grew thicker, wrapping around her like a suffocating fog. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that something dark and malevolent was lurking in the shadows. But she refused to give in to her fear, pushing forward into the darkness with single-minded determination. Chapter 4: The Whispers. Suddenly, a faint whisper drifted through the air, sending a chill down Emily's spine. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Was she alone in the mansion, or was there something or someone else here with her? Ignoring the voice of reason urging her to flee, Emily pressed on, determined to uncover the source of the whisper. But with each passing minute, the suspense tightened its grip, filling her with dread. As she rounded a corner, Emily saw a door at the end of the hallway, slightly ajar. The whisper seemed to be coming from beyond that door, beckoning her closer with its siren song. With trembling hands, Emily pushed open the door and stepped into the room beyond. Chapter 5: The Presence. Inside the room, the air was thick with the scent of old wood and decay. Emily's flashlight cast eerie shadows on the walls as she scanned the room, searching for the source of the whisper. And then, she saw a figure standing in the corner, shrouded in darkness. Emily's blood ran cold as she realized she was not alone. With a gasp, she stumbled backward, her mind reeling with fear. But as the figure stepped forward into the light, Emily saw that it was not a monster or a ghost, but a woman pale and trembling, her eyes wide with terror. In that moment, Emily understood the true horror of the mansion, not the ghosts of the past, but the darkness that dwelled within the human heart. Chapter 6: The Truth Unveiled. As Emily fled from the mansion, her mind raced with questions. Who was the woman in the room, and what had driven her to such madness? What secrets did the mansion hold, and what horrors had unfolded within its walls? As she emerged from the forest, Emily knew that she may never find the answers she sought. But one thing was certain: the mansion held secrets far darker than she could have ever imagined, and some mysteries were better left buried in the shadows. The Haunting of Willow Lake Manor. Chapter 1: The Invitation. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was an invitation from her estranged uncle, inviting her to visit Willow Lake Manor, the family estate she had never even heard of before. Despite the strangeness of the invitation, Sarah's curiosity got the better of her. She packed her bags and set off for the remote countryside, where Willow Lake Manor was said to be located. As she drove along winding country roads, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. There was something about the letter, something ominous lurking beneath the surface. Chapter 2. Arrival at Willow Lake Manor. When Sarah finally arrived at Willow Lake Manor, she was struck by its eerie beauty. The sprawling estate sat on the edge of a dark, murky lake, its ivy-covered walls shrouded in mist. Her uncle, a reclusive figure she had never met, greeted her at the door with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He showed her to her room, a grand chamber filled with antique furniture and faded tapestries. As Sarah settled in for the night, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind sent shivers down her spine. Chapter 3. The Ghostly Apparition. That night, Sarah was awoken by a strange sound echoing through the halls of Willow Lake Manor. She crept out of bed and followed the sound, her heart pounding with fear. As she rounded a corner, Sarah came face to face with a ghostly figure, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her face pale and ethereal. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized she was not alone. The ghostly apparition reached out to her with translucent fingers, her eyes filled with sadness and longing. Chapter 4. The Dark History. In the days that followed, Sarah delved into the history of Willow Lake Manor, uncovering dark secrets that had been buried for centuries. She learned of the tragic tale of Lady Evelyn, a young bride who had drowned in the lake on her wedding night. It was said that her spirit still haunted the halls of the manor, searching for her lost love. As Sarah explored the crumbling estate, she encountered other restless spirits, the victims of a long-forgotten tragedy that had left Willow Lake Manor cursed for generations. Chapter 5. The Haunting. As Sarah delved deeper into the mysteries of Willow Lake Manor, the hauntings grew more intense. Shadowy figures lurked in the corners of her vision, whispering secrets that chilled her to the bone. She began to experience strange phenomena, objects moving of their own accord, whispers echoing through the halls in the dead of night. Sarah knew she had to unravel the mystery of Willow Lake Manor before it consumed her whole. But with each passing day, the darkness seemed to close in around her, threatening to drag her down into its depths. Chapter 6. Confronting the Evil. In a desperate bid to end the haunting, Sarah sought out her uncle, hoping to uncover the truth behind the curse that plagued Willow Lake Manor. But what she discovered was more horrifying than she could have ever imagined. Her uncle revealed himself to be the architect of the curse, a twisted soul consumed by greed and jealousy. Determined to claim the family fortune for himself, he had made a pact with dark forces that had unleashed the spirits of Willow Lake Manor upon the world. Chapter 7. The Final Showdown. In a climactic showdown, Sarah confronted her uncle in the depths of Willow Lake Manor, armed with nothing but her courage and determination. With the help of the restless spirits she had befriended, she managed to break the curse that had held the manor captive for so long, banishing her uncle and his dark allies back to the shadows from whence they came. As the sun rose over Willow Lake Manor, Sarah knew that the darkness had been defeated, but she also knew that the memory of the horrors she had witnessed would haunt her for the rest of her days. The Abyssal Asylum of Dr. Vortex. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, hidden from the prying eyes of the world, lies an asylum shrouded in mystery and terror. The Abyssal Asylum of Dr. Vortex is a place where the boundaries of sanity are tested and the horrors of the human mind are unleashed. The story begins with Dr. Sophia Patel, a brilliant and ambitious psychologist who receives an invitation from the enigmatic Dr. Vortex to join his team at the asylum. The letter promises a chance to work with the most disturbed minds in the world, and Sophia is intrigued. As Sophia descends into the abyssal depths, she discovers that the asylum is a labyrinthine structure built on the ruins of an ancient civilization. The walls are adorned with strange symbols, and the air is thick with the stench of decay. The patients, if they can be called that, are a collection of the most depraved and twisted individuals on the planet. Dr. Vortex, a man with an unsettling grin and a penchant for the macabre, reveals his true intentions: to push the boundaries of human psychology and unlock the secrets of the mind. His methods are unorthodox, to say the least, and Sophia soon finds herself trapped in a living nightmare. As she delves deeper into the asylum, Sophia encounters unspeakable horrors. Patients with grotesque physical deformities, others with minds shattered by unspeakable traumas, and still others who seem to be possessed by malevolent entities. The lines between reality and madness blur, and Sophia begins to question her own sanity. The abyssal depths hide secrets of their own, and Sophia discovers an ancient text hidden within the asylum's walls. The tome speaks of an ancient deity, Jathik, who feeds on the suffering of the human mind. Dr. Vortex has made a pact with this malevolent entity, trading the sanity of his patients for dark knowledge and power. Sophia realizes that she is trapped in a living hell, and the only way to escape is to confront the horrors within. She must navigate the twisted corridors of the asylum, avoid the patients who are not what they seem, and face the abyssal horrors that lurk in the shadows. In the climactic final confrontation, Sophia faces Dr. Vortex and Jathik, the abyssal deity. The outcome is far from certain, and the horrors that await Sophia are beyond human comprehension. Will Sophia escape the abyssal asylum, or will she succumb to the horrors within? The abyssal depths are waiting, and the terrors that lurk within will haunt you forever. Title: The Forgotten Cabin. The woods surrounding Pinecrest Lake were thick with ancient trees, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers towards the darkening sky. Amongst the dense foliage, nestled deep within the shadows, lay a forgotten cabin. Its weathered wooden exterior bore the scars of time, and its windows were like vacant eyes peering out into the wilderness. Chapter 1. The journey begins. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a group of friends set out on a weekend camping trip. Among them were Sarah, a bold and adventurous soul, her boyfriend Alex, the ever-practical leader of the group, and their friends Mark and Emily, eager for a break from the stresses of city life. Their hike through the forest was filled with laughter and excitement, but as night fell, the atmosphere grew tense. The dense canopy above blocked out the moonlight, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Chapter 2. The Discovery. After hours of trudging through the darkness, they stumbled upon the forgotten cabin. Its presence seemed to materialize out of the shadows, sending a shiver down their spines. Despite their initial trepidation, the group decided to take shelter within its walls, reasoning that it was better than spending the night exposed to the elements. Inside, the air was musty and stale, and the faint scent of decay lingered in the air. As they explored the cabin, they discovered strange markings etched into the walls and floor, symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Chapter 3. The Unraveling. As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Objects moved of their own accord, shadows danced along the walls, and the temperature plummeted, sending chills down their spines. Sarah, always the skeptic, brushed off their fears as mere superstition, but even she couldn't deny the feeling of unease that hung in the air like a dense fog. Chapter 4. The Haunting. It wasn't long before they realized they were not alone in the cabin. Whispers echoed through the halls, and ghostly apparitions appeared in the corners of their vision, vanishing as quickly as they appeared. Panic set in as they realized that they were trapped in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Chapter 5. The Descent into Madness. As the hours stretched into days, the group's sanity began to unravel. They argued and fought amongst themselves, their minds consumed by fear and paranoia. Each night brought new terrors, each day a struggle to hold on to what little remained of their sanity. Chapter 6. The Revelation. In the darkness of the cabin's depths, they uncovered the truth behind its haunted facade. Long ago, it had been home to a reclusive family, rumored to dabble in dark magics and forbidden rituals. Their experiments had unleashed a malevolent force that had consumed them, leaving only the empty shell of the cabin behind. Chapter 7. The Final Confrontation. As the sun rose on the final day, the group knew that their time was running out. With nowhere left to run, they made a desperate stand against the darkness that threatened to consume them. In a final, desperate act of bravery, they confronted the entity that lurked within the cabin's walls, hoping against hope that they could banish it once and for all. Chapter 8: The Aftermath. In the end, only Sarah emerged from the cabin's depths, her mind fractured and her spirit broken. She stumbled out into the light of day, the memories of the horrors she had witnessed etched into her very soul. As she made her way back to civilization, she knew that she would never be the same again, haunted by the memories of the forgotten cabin and the darkness that lurked within. The Shadow of Ravenswood. Ravenswood, a small English town, was never the same after the children disappeared. It was as if the very fabric of the town had been torn apart, leaving behind a sense of unease and dread. The wind whispered an eerie chant, and the townsfolk feared an ancient evil had awakened, one that had been lying dormant for centuries. Dr. Elliot Thompson, a renowned occult expert, arrived in Ravenswood to investigate the strange occurrences. He was fascinated by the whispering wind and spent hours deciphering its meaning. The townsfolk were wary of him, but they hoped he could uncover the truth behind the disappearances. As the days passed, Dr. Thompson's behavior became increasingly erratic. He claimed to have uncovered a dark secret and became convinced the children were still alive, trapped in a realm beyond the living. He spent every waking moment researching, poring over ancient texts and seeking out local legends. The townsfolk grew concerned, but Dr. Thompson was undeterred. One night, he disappeared, leaving behind scattered belongings and torn notes. The townsfolk searched for him, but he was nowhere to be found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. On the 10th night, the horror was unleashed. The wind howled, and the children reappeared, their eyes black as coal, skin deathly pale, and smiles twisted. They moved with an unnatural gait, like puppets on strings. The townsfolk tried to run, but the children surrounded them, their black eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. As the night wore on, the townsfolk disappeared, dragged away by the children. When the sun rose, Ravenswood was empty, its streets and houses silent. The wind continued to whisper its eerie chant, and the children patrolled the streets, waiting for the next group of adventurers. Years passed, and Ravenswood became a ghost town, a place of dark legend. Brave adventurers occasionally ventured into the town, seeking to uncover its secrets, but none returned. The wind and the children remained, waiting patiently for their next victims. Years later, a group of brave adventurers decided to explore the abandoned town. They discovered Dr. Thompson's research, his notes scattered everywhere, and his books lay open, as if he had just stepped away. As they read, the wind began to howl, and the chanting grew louder. The children appeared, their black eyes glowing, and the adventurers tried to fight. But they were no match for the children and Dr. Thompson, who had become a puppet of the ancient evil. One by one, the adventurers disappeared, dragged away into the darkness. But one adventurer, Sarah, managed to escape. She had been separated from her group and had hidden in the woods, watching in horror as her friends were dragged away. Sarah knew she had to warn others about Ravenswood, about the horror that lurked in the shadows. Sarah spent years researching, trying to find a way to defeat the ancient evil. She scoured ancient texts, seeking out rituals and incantations that could banish the evil back to hell. She spoke to local experts, seeking out knowledge and guidance. And finally, she found it a ritual to banish the evil back to the depths of hell. Sarah returned to Ravenswood, alone and afraid, but determined. She performed the ritual, and as she did, the wind began to howl, and the chanting grew louder. But this time it was different. This time, the chanting was a cry of defeat, a cry of rage as the ancient evil was banished back to the depths of hell. As the sun rose the next morning, Ravenswood was silent once more, a silence of peace, a silence of freedom from the horror that had lurked in the shadows for so long. The children were gone, and the wind whispered no more secrets in the darkness. Sarah had saved Ravenswood, had saved the living from the dead. And as she walked away from the town, she knew she had finally found redemption, finally found peace. The shadow of Ravenswood was no more, and the town could begin to heal. The townsfolk returned, and the town was rebuilt. The streets were once again filled with laughter and children's play. The wind still whispered, but it was a gentle whisper, a reminder of the horrors that had been overcome. Sarah walked away from Ravenswood, knowing that she would always carry the scars of her experiences with her. But she also knew that she had found a new sense of purpose. She had faced her fears and emerged victorious, and she knew that she could overcome anything that came her way. As she walked, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she had saved Ravenswood, and that the town was finally free from the horror that had lurked in the shadows for so long. She walked for hours, the sun beating down on her, until she came to a small village. She stopped at the local inn, exhausted, and asked for a room. As she lay in bed that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She looked around the room, but there was no one there. Suddenly, she heard a faint whispering in her ear. "You may have saved Ravenswood, but the horror is not yet defeated." Sarah sat up in bed, her heart racing. "Who are you?" she demanded. There was no answer, but the whispering continued. "The ancient evil may have been banished, but its followers remain. They will seek revenge, and they will not rest until they have claimed your soul." Sarah knew that she had to be vigilant. She had saved Ravenswood, but the battle was far from over. She would have to be prepared to face the followers of the ancient evil, and to fight to protect herself and the people she loved. And so, Sarah's journey continued. She traveled the land, seeking out the followers of the ancient evil and fighting to defeat them. She became a legendary warrior, known throughout the land for her bravery and her determination. And though the horror of Ravenswood was never far from her mind, she knew that she had found a new sense of purpose. She had saved Ravenswood, and she would continue to fight to protect the world from the forces of darkness. The story of Sarah and Ravenswood became a legend, told and retold around campfires and in hushed whispers. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that one person can make a difference in the fight against evil.